My name is Walt, and I live in a small town where everybody knows everybody, which makes what happened even worse. You know the kind of place I'm talking about, where the cashier at the grocery store asks about your mother's arthritis, where the mailman knows if you're having a rough week because your bills are piling up, where your business becomes everyone's business before you've even had your morning coffee. It's the sort of town that looks idyllic in photographs, tree-lined streets, a white church steeple piercing the sky, the kind of main street where you half expect to see Jimmy Stewart walking by. But living here is different. Privacy is a luxury we simply don't have. May and I had been married for 7 years. Not a perfect marriage, but whose is? We'd met at a mutual friend's barbecue, back when I still had hair and she still laughed at my terrible jokes. The first few years were good, great even. We bought a small house on Maple Street, the one with the crooked shutters that I kept meaning to fix. We adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Biscuit, who had more personality than sense. We talked about having kids someday, maybe when the time was right, but somewhere along the way things changed. It wasn't dramatic. There was no explosive fight, no definitive moment where everything fell apart. It was more like watching a photograph fade in the sun, so gradual you don't notice until one day you realize the image is barely there anymore. May started working longer hours at the law office where she was a paralegal. I got a promotion at the manufacturing plant that meant earlier mornings and more responsibility. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? Can you pick up dog food? Your mother called again. The smiles disappeared first. Then the touches. Then the real conversations. We became roommates who shared a mortgage and a last name, moving around each other like dancers who'd forgotten the choreography. I told myself it was normal, that all marriages went through phases like this. I told myself we'd find our way back to each other eventually. Looking back now, I realized the signs were there all along. I just didn't want to see them. It started about 6 months before that night at the restaurant. Small things at first. May began paying more attention to her appearance, new clothes that showed up in the closet, expensive perfume that I definitely hadn't bought her, trips to the salon that became more frequent. When I commented on how nice she looked one morning, she barely acknowledged the compliment, just grabbed her coffee and headed for the door. "You're leaving early," I said, glancing at the clock. It was barely 7. "Lots to do at the office," she replied without looking back. Then there was her phone. It became an extension of her hand, always within reach, always face down on whatever surface she set it on. She'd started taking it everywhere, to the bathroom, to the bedroom, even to take out the trash. When it buzzed with notifications, she'd snatch it up quickly, a small smile playing at her lips as she read whatever message had come through. "Who's texting you?" I asked one evening as we sat on the couch, supposedly watching a movie together. She'd been smiling at her screen for the past 10 minutes, completely ignoring the TV. "Just work stuff," she said, but she angled the phone away from me. "Work stuff makes you smile like that?" "It's just Sarah from the office." She sent a funny meme, but she didn't show me the meme. She never showed me anymore. The late nights became routine. "Big case coming up," she'd say. Or, "The partners need this brief by morning." Or, "You know how it is." Except I didn't know how it was, because she'd stopped telling me anything real about her life. One Tuesday evening, I came home earlier than usual. A machine had broken down at the plant, and they'd sent us home while they waited for the repair parts to arrive. As I turned onto our street, I saw a silver BMW parked in our driveway. May was standing beside it, leaning into the driver's side window, laughing at something the driver was saying. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the feeling down. "It's nothing," I told myself. "Just a friend." As I pulled up, May straightened quickly and waved goodbye to whoever was in the car. The BMW backed out and drove away before I could get a good look at the driver. May was already walking toward the house, keys in hand. "Who was that?" I asked, climbing out of my truck. "Oh, that was just Amanda," she said breezily. "My friend from work. She gave me a ride home, because my car was making a weird noise this morning." "Your car seems fine," I said, glancing at her sedan parked on the street where it always was. "Yeah, it stopped making the noise. Probably nothing." She unlocked the door and went inside, ending the conversation. I wanted to believe her. God, how badly I wanted to believe her. So I did. I told myself I was being paranoid, jealous for no reason. Amanda was just a friend. May had friends. That was normal. But then it happened again. About 3 weeks later, I was leaving the hardware store downtown when I saw May getting out of that same silver BMW. This time, I got a better look at the driver. It definitely wasn't a woman. It was a man, younger, well-dressed, the kind of guy who looked like he'd never changed his own oil or fixed a leaky faucet in his life. May didn't see me. She was too focused on her companion, smiling and touching his arm as they talked. They walked into the coffee shop together, and something in my chest twisted painfully. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, debating whether to go in there and confront them. But what would I say? I saw you having coffee with someone. That wasn't a crime. Maybe it really was just a colleague. Maybe I was losing my mind. When May came home that evening, I was waiting. How was work? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Fine. Busy. The usual. She kicked off her shoes and headed for the kitchen. Do anything after work? She paused just for a second. No, why? I saw you today. Downtown. Getting out of that silver car. Her back was to me, but I saw her shoulders tense. When she turned around, her face was carefully neutral. Oh, that? Yeah, I grabbed coffee with James from the office. We were going over some case files. James? He's one of the associates. He sometimes gives me a ride when my car's being weird. I thought you said it was Amanda who gave you rides. It is. Sometimes. And sometimes it's James. It depends on who's leaving when I am. She said it like I was being ridiculous for asking. Why? Is that a problem? You never mentioned any James before. Walt, I work with a lot of people. I don't give you a detailed roster of everyone at the office. There was an edge to her voice now, irritation creeping in. Are you seriously jealous because a colleague gave me a ride? And there it was, she'd flipped it on me, made me the unreasonable one. I felt myself backing down, that familiar guilt settling over me. Maybe I was being jealous. Maybe I was being controlling. Maybe this was all innocent, and I was the one with the problem. No, I said finally. We don't talk much anymore. I feel like I don't know what's going on in your life. Well, whose fault is that? She snapped. You're always at work or tired or watching TV with the dog. When's the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened? She wasn't entirely wrong. I had been tired. I had been distant in my own way. So I apologized. I told her we should try harder. I suggested we plan a date night, maybe go out to dinner, reconnect. Sure, she said, but she was already looking at her phone again, that small smile returning. We can do that sometime. Sometime never came. The changes continued. May started going to the gym, something she'd never shown interest in before. She'd come home flushed and energized, immediately heading for the shower. She bought new lingerie, expensive pieces that I found in the laundry basket, but she never wore them for me. When I hinted at intimacy, she always had an excuse. Too tired. Too stressed. Too much on her mind. Maybe this weekend, she'd say. But weekend would come, and she'd find a reason to be busy, to be elsewhere, to be anywhere but with me. I noticed she'd started wearing makeup to work every day, when before she'd only bothered for special occasions. Her hair was always styled perfectly. She'd traded her comfortable flats for heels that made her legs look amazing. She looked beautiful, more beautiful than she had in years. Just not for me. One Saturday morning, I woke up to find her side of the bed empty. I padded downstairs and found her on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in a low voice. I can't talk right now, she was saying. I'll call you later. When she saw me, she quickly added, Okay, Sarah, thanks for understanding. Bye. Little early for work calls on a Saturday, I said. It's not that early. It's already 9. She stood up, stretching. I'm gonna run some errands. Do you need anything? I could come with you. No, that's okay. I'll be faster on my own. You should fix those shutters you keep talking about. And she was gone, leaving me standing in our living room, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I tried to fix the shutters that day. I really did. But I kept thinking about that phone call, the way she'd lowered her voice, the way she'd hung up so quickly when she saw me. I thought about James with his silver BMW. I thought about the lingerie and the gym and the late nights and all the small distances that had grown into chasms. That evening, when May came home with a single shopping bag that couldn't possibly account for 4 hours of errands, I almost asked where she'd really been. But I didn't, because deep down, I was terrified of the answer. So I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself that marriages go through rough patches. I told myself that we just needed to try harder, talk more, maybe see a counselor. I told myself anything except the truth that was staring me in the face. I was a coward. I see that now. I chose willful blindness because the alternative was too painful to contemplate. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of building a life together, I couldn't just throw that away based on suspicions and coincidences. I needed proof. I needed to be absolutely certain. Be careful what you wish for. One evening, a few of my co-workers invited me to join them for dinner. It was a last-minute plan, and honestly, I was exhausted. My shift had been brutal. A machine breakdown meant we'd spent 4 hours behind schedule, and my back was screaming from lifting parts that should have required 2 people. All I wanted was to go home, heat up whatever leftovers were in the fridge, and collapse on the couch with biscuits sprawled across my lap. But saying no felt awkward. My co-workers, Gary, Michelle, and Tom, were standing by the time clock, already pulling on their jackets, talking about this Italian place that had just opened on the edge of town. Gary caught my eye and waved me over. "Come on, Walt. When's the last time you did something fun? You've been looking like a zombie for weeks." He wasn't wrong. And the truth was, going home held even less appeal than usual. May had been especially distant lately, barely looking up from her phone when I walked through the door. The house felt empty, even when both of us were in it. So I went. We piled into Gary's truck, me squeezed in the back with Michelle, listening to Tom's endless story about his teenage daughter's latest drama with her boyfriend. The restaurant, Valentino's, was new enough that it still had that fresh paint smell mixing with garlic and tomato sauce. Red checkered tablecloths, candles stuck in wine bottles, Dean Martin crooning from hidden speakers. A little cliché, maybe, but charming in its way. When we walked into the restaurant, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I was thinking about whether to order the lasagna or the chicken parmesan, wondering if they had good bread, hoping the portions were decent because I was starving. But then I saw her. My wife, May. At first, my brain couldn't process it. It was like seeing a familiar face in an unexpected context. Your dentist at a rock concert, your pastor at a bar, where reality bends just slightly and you question what you're seeing. May was supposed to be working late. That's what she'd told me this morning, barely glancing up from her coffee as she grabbed her bag. "Don't wait up," she'd said. "Big case coming to trial, lots of prep work." She was sitting at a small corner table, holding hands with another man, smiling at him in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. Not the polite, social smile she used for neighbors, or the tight smile she gave me when I tracked mud on the clean floor. This was different. This was radiant. This was the smile I remembered from our early days, when she'd look at me like I'd hung the moon. Except she was looking at him that way now. He was younger than me. Mid-30s, maybe, with carefully styled hair and a suit that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Handsome in that polished, generic way, like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. They were leaning close, their conversation intimate, their body language speaking volumes even from across the restaurant. And then I recognized him. The silver BMW. James. The colleague who gave her rides. Before I could even process it, he leaned in and kissed her. Not a peck. A real kiss. The kind that meant something. The kind that told a story of other kisses, other moments, other betrayals I hadn't witnessed. My stomach dropped. It was a physical sensation, like missing a step in the dark or standing too close to a cliff's edge. My mouth went dry. My hands started shaking. Behind me, I heard Michelle's sharp intake of breath as she saw what I was seeing. "Walt," Gary said quietly, his hand on my shoulder. "Man, I'm sorry. We can leave. We can go somewhere else." But I couldn't move. I stood frozen in the doorway of Valentino's, the hostess looking at me expectantly with her stack of menus, Dean Martin singing about amore, the smell of garlic bread suddenly making me nauseous. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of making breakfast together and arguing about whose turn it was to vacuum and holding her hair when she had the flu, all of it crashing through my mind in rapid-fire images. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was realizing that this explained everything. The distance. The phone she'd started keeping face down on the counter. The new lingerie I'd found in the laundry that she'd never worn for me. The way she'd started showering as soon as she got home from work. The late nights that had become routine. The sudden interest in going to the gym. The way she'd stopped asking about my day. Amanda who turned into James. The silver BMW. All of it. I'd thought we were just going through a rough patch. I'd thought maybe we needed to try harder, talk more, plan a vacation, see a counselor. I hadn't thought she'd simply found someone else. Without thinking, I walked straight toward them. My legs moved on autopilot, carrying me through the restaurant while my brain struggled to catch up. My co-workers followed behind, confused, probably worried I was about to cause a scene. Other diners glanced up as we passed, sensing drama the way people do, that predatory curiosity that comes with witnessing someone else's worst moment. May looked up and froze, her hands still tangled with his. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man, James the colleague, the one from the silver BMW, followed her gaze and saw me approaching. He had the decency to look uncomfortable, at least. His face flushed. He tried to pull his hand away, but May grabbed his sleeve like she didn't want him to leave. Like even now, even caught in the act, she was choosing him over me. That hurt more than anything. "May," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. "What's going on?" It was a stupid question. I knew what was going on. But what else do you say in a moment like that? How do you articulate the collapse of everything you thought you knew? Her lover, because that's what he was, wasn't he? Pulled his hand away despite her grip. He mumbled something that might have been, "I should go," half rising from his chair. But May's hand shot out again, this time landing on his arm, keeping him there. She turned to me, eyes wide, and I saw something flash across her face. Not guilt, not remorse, annoyance. She whispered through clenched teeth, "God, please don't. You're embarrassing both of us. Embarrassing both of us." The words hung in the air between us, somehow louder than anything else in the restaurant. The couple at the next table stopped eating. Dean Martin finished his song, and there was a moment of perfect silence before the next one started. Michelle made a small sound behind me, something between a gasp and a word. As if I was the problem. As if catching her cheating made me the one causing a scene. As if my pain, my shock, my public humiliation was somehow an inconvenience to her. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I can explain." Not, "This isn't what it looks like," even though it was exactly what it looked like. Just embarrassment. Concern about appearances. About what people would think. About her reputation in this small town, where everybody knows everybody. My coworkers heard everything. The tables around us went silent, conversations dying mid-sentence as people leaned in to hear better. Somewhere in the kitchen, someone dropped a pot and it clattered loudly, making May flinch. She looked more annoyed than guilty, like I'd interrupted her perfect evening, crashed her party, ruined her fun. I stood there looking at her, this woman I'd promised forever to, this woman I'd held in the emergency room when she had appendicitis, this woman whose face I'd memorized in every light and mood and moment. And I realized I didn't know her at all. Or maybe I'd known her all along, and just hadn't wanted to see it. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and said loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "I'm not the one embarrassed, May. Not anymore." Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wedding ring, and placed it carefully on their table. It made a small metallic sound as it hit the surface, rolling slightly before settling. 7 years reduced to 14 grams of gold. May stared at it like it was a live grenade. Then I walked away. I walked past my co-workers, past the hostess with her menus, past the couple by the door who were definitely going to be telling this story for years. I pushed through the door into the parking lot, into the cool evening air that suddenly felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in months. Behind me, I heard Gary calling my name. I heard the scrape of chairs as my co-workers scrambled to follow me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I just kept walking, past the cars and the street lights and the newly planted trees that the town council had been so proud of. Michelle caught up first, slightly out of breath. Walt, stop. Are you okay?" "No," I said, because what was the point of lying? "But I will be." Gary and Tom joined us a moment later. None of them seemed to know what to say. What do you say to someone whose life just imploded over chicken parmesan and checkered tablecloths? "We can still get dinner," Tom offered weakly. "Somewhere else. Anywhere else." I almost laughed. "I think I've lost my appetite." They drove me home in silence. When we pulled up to my house, not our house, never our house again, Gary reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "If you need anything, man. Anything at all." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and climbed out of the truck. Biscuit greeted me at the door, tail wagging, oblivious to the fact that our family had just shrunk. I scratched behind his ears, and he leaned into me, giving me his weight, and something inside me cracked. I cried then, standing in the hallway with my dog, huge gasping sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. All the hurt I'd been swallowing down, all the loneliness I'd been pretending not to feel, all the hope I'd been clinging to that maybe we could fix this. It poured out of me in waves. Later that night, she blew up my phone with messages. The first few were defensive. "You had no right to do that in public. You humiliated me. How could you be so cruel?" Then came the excuses. It's not what you think. It just happened. We were just talking. As if I hadn't seen them kissing. You've been so distant lately. As if that justified anything. Then anger. You always do this. You never understood me. You've been a terrible husband for years. And finally, inevitably begging, "Please, Walt, can we talk? I made a mistake. Don't throw away 7 years. I love you. He means nothing. Please come home." But I never replied. Not once. I watched the messages come in, read each one, and set my phone face down on the nightstand. What was there to say? What words could possibly matter now? In a town this small, news travels fast. By the next morning, everyone knew. The cashier at the grocery store gave me a sympathetic look when I bought coffee. The mailman patted my arm wordlessly as he handed me a stack of bills. At work, people either approached me with hushed condolences or avoided me entirely, not knowing what to say. And May had to face everyone alone. I heard through the grapevine, because in a small town, there's always a grapevine, that she'd tried to go to work the next day. That people stared. That someone had made a comment. That she'd left early crying. Part of me felt bad about that. But a larger part, the part that had placed that ring on her table, felt nothing at all. Because the moment she told me I was embarrassing her, something inside me finally snapped, and I realized I deserved far better than someone ashamed to be caught betraying me. Not ashamed of the betrayal itself, mind you. Just ashamed to be caught. That distinction mattered. I deserved better than someone who would hold another man's hand while wearing my ring. Better than someone who would prioritize her affair over my dignity. Better than someone who saw my pain as an inconvenience. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. May tried to contest it, tried to drag things out, tried to spin a narrative where I was somehow the villain. But in a town this small, the truth had already spread. Everyone knew what she'd done. Everyone had heard about that night at Valentino's. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. I kept the house, the dog, and my dignity. She got the fancy car she'd bought last year. I now knew who she'd been trying to impress, and a reputation that would follow her forever in this small town. Last I heard, she'd moved to the city. Her and her boyfriend. The one from the restaurant. I hope they're happy. I genuinely do. Not for her sake, but for mine. Because her happiness means she'll stay gone, and her absence is the best gift she could give me. As for me, I'm still here. Still in the same small town, still working at the same plant, still living in the house with the crooked shutters that I finally fixed. Biscuit and I have our routines. Work, dinner, evening walks around the neighborhood. It's quiet, but it's honest. Simple, but mine. Sometimes I see people whispering when I pass. Sometimes I catch the pitying looks. But more often I see respect. Because I walked away with my head high. Because I refused to beg or plead or make myself smaller to accommodate someone else's betrayal. And late at night, when the house is quiet and Biscuit is snoring at the foot of my bed, I don't miss her. Not really. I miss what I thought we had. I miss the version of her that maybe never really existed outside my imagination. But the real May, the one who could look me in the eye and tell me I was embarrassing her while holding another man's hand, I don't miss her at all. My name is Walt, and I live in a small town where everybody knows everybody. And for once, that worked in my favor. Because everyone saw who I really was that night, and everyone saw who May really was too. And in the end, that made all the difference. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.